A question about the ice house. How did the machinery that went down into the water not freeze?
Well, at times, it would.
Because some of the pictures show that.
It would freeze when they, it would be frozen into the, into the lake, when they started, in all probability, and they would just break it out. And there were concrete abutments in the lake, and I'm not sure whether they've been removed now or not, but they were there for years after the ice house was torn down. And there were these concrete abutments. The tramway was hitched to these things. There were walkways on the side of this huge conveyor belt that you could walk right up to the top of it. They had to be to maintain it, because every now and then a piece of ice would get turned the wrong way or something, and they'd stop the machines and correct it. And you could walk up both sides of it. It had a roof over it. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even open to the way. It had a thatched roof over the whole thing, running right up into to the ice house. And there was this is a sled cutter.
Susan, you might want to just look over your shoulder with a chair.
That's the cutter that they're using. The one that they used that I remember, Davis and Trevor, was quite a bit bigger than that.
There's an article on the history of harvesting ice I'm going to leave for you. You can have those pictures too.
Oh, great.
Yeah, there's a sled with a one-lugger engine on it, and the big cutter blade that cut the ice.
And these are all the blocks.
Yeah.
I think the one on the bottom is a much older picture with a horse pulling a blade.
Yeah.
Some of the pictures were from the 1860s and 70s.
Nobody remembers, not too many people. I had somebody ask me about it a short time ago. Nobody remembers the big wells on top of Wire Hill, and there was a huge well up on
Giant tank.
Sure. Well, it was in the ground, and it was all fieldstone.
Oh.
And it was huge, because we used to swim in it. It supplied the water to Edgewood's farm. There was a pipe leading from that well all the way down to Edgewood Farm. And before a lot of the town had water, Edgewood Farm had water, because the mill, several years ago, they repaired the raceway that goes between Lake Chickwick and what we call the Hatch and Stevie Pond. And that raceway is made up of granite slabs that are laid down in the ground, and there's granite columns on the side and the granite top. And that lets the water out of Lake Chickwick into what they call Three Corners, and then into Stevie's Pond. And back, I'm going to say 5 or 10 years ago, they had to repair that raceway. And they put a camera in there to see what it was like. And they found 6 beaver dams in there. So they had to remove the beaver dam. And then they found a pipe leading off to the right-hand side. Now, I was down there one day and talking with one of the engineers, and he said, "Do you live around here?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been coming here all my life." And he said, "Well, it's funny." He said, "We started down in the raceway with the camel. We saw this pipe going off to the right-hand side." And I said, "Sure, that fed the reservoir on top of the hill." And he looked at me and said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Right up on top of my hill, there was a huge reservoir. I mean, it was a great big old stone well, and I don't know how deep it was, but I know it was at least at least 20 or 30 feet deep. And it was because we used to dive in, and we used to swim in it, we'd try to get down to the bottom, we couldn't. And it had a thatched roof over it, and over the years, some of the field stones on the well had loosened and fallen away, and probably being nudged away a little bit by some of the kids at the time, and there was a stream that ran all the way down to the bottom of the hill, and it was out of that well up there.
How do you think, did they pump the water up to the
Sure,
well?
from the mill.
Ah.
Somehow, I don't know whether they were draw pumps, but I imagine they probably were, and I imagine there was some kind of a device between the mill and the lake where they pushed the water up onto that hill, because that reservoir was filled all the time. I mean, it was always full, and it supplied the water for Edward's farm.
On the top of Osgood Hill, Uncle Tom took us up there. Tim had found it again. On the top of Osgood Hill, there were 2 tanks, and the wooden steel bands and cedar sides. The 2 of them have now collapsed. One foundation looks like 1870s, very rough concrete, and then one looks like maybe when they built the house on the hill, the one where the Maeve Cullen lives now. The second foundation for this tank looks like 1930s, and I think Sunny Ridge they call it. That house was built in 1933. But anyways, Tom always wanted to go see it, so in his wheelchair, a bunch of us carried him up in the woods to find the second water supply for Sunny Ridge and Uncle Abe's house.
There was a well on top of Bear Hill, and Jeffrey, my son Jeffrey, and Timmy Quinlan, his chum, and I forget who else was with him, but he came back one day and he said, "Dad," he said, "there's a well up on the hill." I said, "There is?" He said, "Yeah." And so I went up on the hill and we looked at it, and there was a pipe leading from that down to the town farm. And that well up there supplied water for the town farm.
No kidding.
Years. And so I called Buddy Sear and I said, "Buddy," I said, "there's a well up on Bear Hill." I said, "You might want to fill it in," because I said the kids are up there camping and that. And so he sent somebody up and they filled the well in so nobody get hurt by it.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. And the Kittredges own that whole hill on Dale Street, and every year, every spring, you would take your young heifers. If you had an area where there was feed and where there was water, you would take your heifers out and you would put them there and leave them there all summer long. In fact, one of the areas that we used is right next to your sister's house on Academy Road. That pasture that's fenced in now, that's where Kittredge put his heifers. The last of the year, we put the heifers there in the early spring, and they'd stay there all summer long.
And I remember a well head right next to the brick house. There's a flat area, and there was
we make sure that they had water,
and they just graze all day.
Yeah.
Sit in the sun
all day long. They'd be there, and they'd be wild as wild animals when you went to bring them in the fall. I mean, around the end of August, 1st September, you had to go over and you had to get these animals and bring them back to the farm. And we had one area where Buddy Wells built his house over here that was wet, and Kittredge could put his heifers out here all summer long. And of course, the Kittredges called this the orchard, because on top of Bear Hill there was an apple orchard, and there was apples, and I think there were peaches, and I'm not sure what else there was up there, but When I discovered my property here, I went down to the farm and I told Mr. Kennedy, I said, I've just found 5 acres of land on Dale Street for sale. And he said, you have? And I said, yeah. He said, how much they want? And I said, $2,400. He said, I'll write you a check, Dave. And I said, no, I'll get the money, Mr. Kennedy. And he said, well, don't lose it now, get that property. And so I did. My wife and I bought this property. We bought 5 acres of land for $2,400 here. And that, like you said before, that hill was one of Kittredge's woodlots. And during the winter vacation,
Let me stop you. I'm gonna now